Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. You mentioned that you were working full time. You were probably spending, what was, like 3 days a week, you said? You'd alternate Fridays?
I'd spend like a Friday and then some time on the weekends.
Okay.
Kind of half day. We didn't have any kids yet at the time, so.
And you said your dad or your husband was full time in the restaurant, correct?
Yeah, he was still flipping houses until about 4 years in. Finally, when we opened the third restaurant, or we were about to open the third restaurant, was when I finally had the sit him down and have the talk. Like, you really have to be here all full time, because now it's a business. Now it's for real.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the things I'm
right.
I'm trying to get into. You guys were able to open a restaurant with basically 2 full-time jobs,
mm-hmm.
right? How do you go about, like, how do you do that without living in your business? You hear people saying, like, oh, the first year you're going to be there 60 hours a week. You were there maybe 30 hours a week, right?
So, I would say a couple specific things. One, which was a recommendation we got we didn't have a lot of friends who are in the restaurant industry, but we had a few, and we definitely went to them with a lot of questions. And one here in New Orleans who worked for a very well-known single location of an upscale restaurant with a very well-known chef. He gave us some great advice, which was open 5 days a week, at least initially. And this particular restaurant that he worked for still was only 5 days a week after decades. And he said things break. Having those 2 days when you have
break.
that downtime and you can get away from your business and like everybody's off is really going to help you keep your mental space clear. And so we started 5 days a week, and I feel like it was at least a year, if not almost 2 years, before we expanded to 6 days and then eventually expanded to 7 days.
But I guess what else do you need other than, if you're not there, what needs to be there
you have to have,
execute?
like a highly qualified people to help you. So for example, with us, neither of us is a chef mm-hmm. or has a culinary background. We like to eat a lot. So we knew what we wanted on the menu. We just didn't know how to say, these are the things we want to eat. How do I actually turn this into a recipe and a spec and execute it in a kitchen? So we did hire basically like a kitchen chef consultant who helped us take those ideas we had written on paper and develop them into, this is what the original menu is going to look like. We eventually hired that person to be the restaurant manager, much more like kitchen focused, but my husband was there. When my husband was there, he's usually, kind of in the front of house. So they worked hand in hand, and things didn't work out long term with that individual. It was probably, 5 or 6 months after we opened that we parted ways. And then we hired the next person. We were really looking for somebody who had really strong front of house experience as well, from the, guest experience and guest service side.
So do you think you were able to find people that you could lean on like this because of the time? Do you think the timing was right? Because in 2008, 9, 10, was there a lot of opportunity because people were out of a lot of work? Was it easier to find people?
I definitely do not feel like we had the hiring struggles. There also was not a lot of breakfast, brunch focused restaurants at that time. We were really on the kind of front end of that curve, which is, of course, very popular right now. And there's a lot of competitors in the space, but we were much more on that front end. And so it's a very attractive schedule for a lot of experienced hospitality folks who are, they've just got burnt out on those late nights and being away from their family, particularly you get to that age where they have a family and the family has a more traditional, weekday 9 to 5 schedule and they're missing it. This schedule is very attractive. So I felt like in our first several restaurants, we always got, generally got really solid managers and hourly staff because they wanted that daytime life experience.
That makes sense. And I feel like we've been tiptoeing around it, but you've mentioned it a few times, the significance of systems and processes, mm-hmm. procedures. What do we need to know about implementing those? How do we know those things are being done when we're not there?
Right. So I would say the first thing is having them, right? Yep. So having them be written down, so when you're in the back of house, it's about, what are your recipe specs and how do you check that people follow them? Are they doing prep lists? Are they prep to shelf life. What are the pars you need on a Saturday versus a Tuesday? Those are the things that, in this case, like the chef consultant helped us really develop. And then in the front of house, it's all about, the steps of service. So in that first batch of people that we hired, we had several highly experienced servers who came from another breakfast concept that was, kind of across town from us. And they really stepped in and said, hey, this is what we suggest that we put in place. So we kind of put in that, we trained everybody together, following some steps of service that were, I guess the way I would always describe it is like elevated casual dining. We want people to feel like they're getting that, very comfortable, very familiar experience. We want them to, we want the server to know their name. We want them to know what they want to eat, what they want to drink, and that sort of stuff, and have that rapport with the guest. But we want to give them like a great food experience side of that as well.
Okay.
So take that level of care in the food so that it's not diner food, the differentiation of like, this is not a diner.